Hello, hello. Massive welcome to this live masterclass all around podcasting. Very, very excited for this. We have a special guest, Jerry Potter, who's going to take us through all the fundamentals of podcasting, how to get started. The reason that YouTube is so powerful for podcasts. This is huge. This is a big thing for YouTube now to be the one platform to rule them all with podcasts, live streams, TikTok style content as shorts. And I think this is really, really exciting to see where they're taking this, but also how we can leverage this to build our businesses and brands. So this is an interactive session. We do have some content to run through at the start, but we're going to be hanging out and answering your questions as we go through. So as we go through, feel free to leave some questions in the chat. Be respectful, as with any live stream. This isn't a place for channel reviews, for spamming, self-promotion. Let's have a good time. Let's help each other out. And let's learn about podcasting. So let's bring him on, the man of the hour, Jerry. Massive welcome. Thank you for giving up your time and sharing this awesome stuff with us.
I'm excited to be here. It's crazy to think podcasting and YouTube both started 20 years ago in 2005. And as great as both platforms are by themselves, they both had a major flaw, but now together they sort of fill the other one's weakness. And so whether you're thinking about starting one or you have one, you're adding it to your YouTube channel, like we got you today. I'm excited to dive into all of this.
And so just for everyone here really quickly, Jerry is a YouTuber, is an ex-radio host as well, and now helps people build their online presence with podcasts and YouTube channels and all of that stuff. Do you want to give us a really quick background? Like, how did you end up here?
Yeah. Do you mind sharing the screen here real quick?
Yeah.
I
Let's
just
jump across.
because I like pictures. I'm a visual learner. So I am a founder of a company called Done by Lunch Entrepreneurs. The whole idea is that you can run your business in half the time and be done by lunch by using high leverage things like YouTube and podcasts. But I worked for 15 years as a morning show presenter or a morning show personality, depending on what part of the world that you're in. Then I jumped onto YouTube, and I'm grateful to have grown to over 150,000 subscribers and now host podcasts that reach over 700,000 people per year. And so when podcasting was added to YouTube, I just saw this opportunity. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is this is everything I've been doing coming together, pulling from everything I knew worked on radio and in YouTube. And the thing I'm most proud about personally is that I've used it to build a business that I can run from anywhere. And the part I love most is it allows me to travel and show my kids what a big, diverse world that we live in. There I am in Australia as well as Japan. So I've been close to Justin. I haven't been there to quite visit him yet, but yeah, it's been really fun to be able to do that. And it's a big thanks to YouTube and podcasting from that.
So I think this is something that I don't have a podcast. I do listen to podcasts, and I know that there is some power in podcasts. I think there is nothing else out there where you're locked in. You're putting your headphones on. You're at the gym. You're in transit somewhere, and you're locked in. It's not like YouTube where you could be squirrel braining between one piece of content and another. So I think that there is some massive potential here. Can you just can we start from there, like the overview podcasts? And then bring in the why YouTube side. I think if we start from that place, we'll be able to lay the foundations for some Q&A. And obviously, we want this to be interactive for everyone as well as we go through. I can already see we've got some accelerator members jumping in here as well, and some questions and things coming through. So massive welcome to everyone joining us on here. But let's look at the why you love podcasts and that kind of stuff, like the kind of why podcasts.
Yeah. So, I mean, to talk about those a bit, podcasts, as you mentioned, are a medium where somebody is usually by themselves in the car or with headphones on. I listen to them while I'm hiking or, while I'm driving, different things like that. So there is sort of an intimacy and a trust. And there is something too about, you put it on and then you put the device away in your pocket. It's not quite as skip happy or swipe happy as a YouTube short or a regular YouTube video. And so, yeah, let's talk about some of the positives here. One of the things I get asked a lot is like, oh, isn't it too late? I just mentioned podcasting has been around for over 20 years. So let me just geek out with some numbers here for you really quick. Not to take away from YouTube, but there are 114 million active YouTube channels, okay? And only 450,000 active podcasts in the Apple directory, which means the audio side of podcasting is approximately 99.996% less competition than a YouTube channel by itself. Okay. So it is definitely not too late to start a podcast or grow one. In addition to this, podcasts are great for building trust. We talked about how people listen, usually by themselves. It feels more like an intimate one-on-one conversation. It is, a great way to reach busy people. Like when the idea of watching a podcast on YouTube, I was like, why? I would never do that. Why would I watch something if I could just go listen to it? People are, I think, craving long form content. So this plays to the YouTube and the podcast side. But we have been in this short form, highly stimulated dopamine hit world for a few years, and I feel like we're starting to move back. Not that that's ever going to go away because it can be so addictive, but I think people are now starting to crave a little bit more long form stuff. And we'll talk about this a little bit more when we get to the YouTube part. But a single episode, when done right, can grow your authority, grow your audience, and your income all in a single thing. And then another great thing too is, in addition to people kind of craving that long form content, the other great thing about podcasts is you can run topical promotions on podcasts. So anyone who has a YouTube channel, if you've put up a YouTube video and it got 1,000 views or 5,000 views or 500,000 views, whatever like a big video is for you, and then you look at it and you're like, oh man, I sure wish I'd suggested they join my email list in there, or I sure wish I could promote my event that's coming up next month or something like that. One of the great things in audio podcasting is you can go back using something called dynamic audio insertion, or sometimes dynamic ad insertion, and you can promote something current while it's happening in all your episodes and then take it away when it's over. Podcasts are also a lot more algorithm proof than all of the other social media platforms. Like once somebody decides to follow or subscribe to your podcast, when they open their app, they should see the stuff in there every single time. And then certainly compared to the Instagrams and the TikToks of the world, it's much longer lasting content. So once upon a time, there's a photo there. I did some stand-up comedy for a few years, kind of as a hobby. My favorite thing about it, other than the fact that it was the most terrifying thing I've ever done, my favorite thing about it was once you had like a really good joke or set or bit or whatever you want to call it, you could use it over and over again. And the same thing is true with podcasts and YouTube, is that they can live on for years and years and years. And that's something that I really, really love. So now they sound pretty amazing, but they've always had one major flaw, and that is that it's hard to get podcasts discovered. So the number of podcasts that get featured in Forbes or go viral in some way is close to zero. And so when I was getting out of radio, a lot of people told me you should teach podcasting. And I thought, oh, I could teach somebody how to create a good podcast, right? A good piece of audio content, but I couldn't show them how to grow it. Our radio show had good ratings, but we had 100,000-watt signal behind us and a big marketing budget and sometimes billboards and, TV commercials and stuff like that. But you don't get that when you're, starting a podcast. And so that's where our friend YouTube comes in, and together they become so, so powerful. And that's what gets me excited to talk about this stuff.
So I know we're going to jump into how people can get started, because I know that there's a lot of mistakes and that kind of stuff that people make, and everyone wants to know that they're doing the right thing. Totally get it. I mean, that's what our channel is based around, helping people get their message out there. And this is why we have so much overlap. But from here, where would you so with the opportunity on YouTube, it's obviously not too late. This is still such a brand new thing in YouTube's sense. But is it just YouTube that you'd recommend that they go on? Like if you were starting a podcast or recommending someone start from today, should they be everywhere? Or how does that work with podcasts? And is it easy to go to YouTube and to other places?
When you say everywhere, do you mean like trying to be on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, or putting the video other places, or what?
I mean, in terms of podcasts, like
Okay.
is there a handful of places that people should put them, or is YouTube enough now? Or where would you be putting your podcast?
Yeah, I would absolutely include audio, and then I would put the video version on YouTube. And that is because it is that I can reach busy people on the go with the audio, but I can also get discovered by new people on YouTube. And I hear it all the time. Somebody say, I found your podcast on YouTube, and then I started listening to the audio version, which is exactly what we hope will happen. You can add your video podcast to Spotify. And if you have a big audience there, that could be something that you might want to do. It's a weird, Spotify is a weird thing because you get, like, if you add video, then it takes away your audio podcast and it's not there anymore. You can technically have a video podcast on Apple Podcasts. I know because I had one in 2006 that nobody watched because nobody knew what podcasts really were back then. But it's YouTube is the one that is the big opportunity. And that's where I would 100% focus again because of that discoverability piece. The rest of it would be if you're literally sitting around with nothing to do, you could go test some of those other platforms. But yeah, YouTube and whatever your audio host is, those are going to be the key ones.
And we might be jumping ahead now, but I've seen this in the chat. In terms of discoverability, as you're talking about, what is the discoverability piece on YouTube? Is it still search like it is with regular videos, or is it more on the YouTube music podcasting side of that? Where's the low hanging fruit, or is it both?
Yeah, the big thing that has happened is that YouTube's algorithm has gotten way, way smarter. And the funny thing is, I always like try and, predict what's going to happen. And sometimes I'm right and sometimes I'm wrong. And I started saying, I'm like, I think AI is making the algorithm smarter on YouTube. And then sure enough, Todd, I forget his last name, the guy who's like the president of algorithms or whatever at YouTube came out and said, yeah, because of AI, we can look at a piece of content, a video podcast, for example, and know way more about it. And therefore, we can recommend them from smaller channels because we can tell what the video or what the episode is about. Where it used to be, as you know, sometimes a small channel would get something recommended, but they were always worried about keyword stuffing and I think other things like that. And so now basically AI is smarter than the people. So now they can recommend some of this stuff. So that is the opportunity. I do think it's absolutely search based. I'm still doing search based titles, but I'm also leaning more into that, what I call a click worthy title, because so many people now are consuming in that way. Like we see video, you teach this all the time, and I'm completely there with you that if you're growing a YouTube channel, play the long game, right? Maybe you get a bunch of views your first couple of weeks if you do something, click worthy and maybe sensational, but play the long game with the search. And I think now we're getting into an era where we can do a little bit of both, and that's going to be the best opportunity. So sometimes with my podcast episodes on YouTube, I'll worry less about search because I think it's a good topic, even if I can't find a keyword for it. And so far, some of that stuff has worked.
Yeah, I think the way I see it, obviously without touching the podcast side, but from being on YouTube for a long time, like yourself, the way I see it is YouTube's main goal is to give the viewer or the listener in podcast side a good experience. So any algorithm change or anything or AI coming in, it's all to help it better serve that goal. Which is why we choose to lean into search primarily for our regular content. But I'd imagine that there would have to be a big search play, that same sorts of algorithms are coming into play with just helping the viewer or the user of YouTube have a good experience. So find the content that's related to them in that moment that they are going to click on, tap on, and then stick around watching. I also think something you touched on as well with the people now, there's a big push for longer form content. I mean, we're seeing the rise of people watching YouTube on TV like go through the roof, and it's overtaken Netflix and things like that. We hear these stats thrown around, but I think there's a massive opportunity for people that are creating long form. Maybe you've had a podcast before, whether you were doing video or not before, but I think there is a play now to maybe look at doing video and bringing that piece into it. I mean, what would you say to someone like, if I'm already creating a podcast, I've got the audio piece, but do I need to worry about the video piece? Because I know my thoughts might be a little different to yours here, but I think they should.
I before I sort of pivoted into working with people on this, I surveyed. I did some big surveys anywhere that I could. Right, I went into Facebook groups, asked permission to give people surveys, and then I also reached out to some people with huge podcasts that I know, and I found some people that were like, "Look, I've already got a huge podcast. I've been doing it for 10 years, and I'm stubborn, and I'm not going to change." And I was like, cool. But I think for anyone who is doing an audio podcast and you are not happy with where it is, you're not happy with the growth or it's not growing, yeah, I think it's the time to add video. And if that means that you go to publishing half as often or anything like that, I think that's totally fine. Another thing that I found in the survey that I did was, and I'll be completely transparent here, when YouTube said we're adding podcast, at first I was like, okay, that's interesting. But I thought nobody's going to watch a podcast on YouTube. Why would they watch something if they could listen to it while they were working out or driving or something else, right? And but I started asking around. It was my friend's daughter that first brought it up. She goes, "Oh, if there's a video podcast and an audio podcast, I will absolutely listen to the audio or sorry, watch the video version over the audio version anytime. And if there's two separate podcasts on the same topic, I'll choose video every time." And I pushed and I was like, why? Like, why? And she goes, I love seeing people's facial expressions. She said, if it's an interview, I like seeing people's reactions. And so it's just it's a big part of it. Here, I have a quick,
Yeah, maybe
if
bring
you
it back
bring up
up.
the slides real quick trivia question, let's ask in the chat. I sort of maybe sort of gave some of this away, but they did a study among people who have started consuming podcasts in the last year or two. What percentage of them do you think said they prefer video? 19%, 28%, or 40%? Okay. So 19, 28, or 40. Let us know in the chat right now for those of you that are here live. And again, like I said, I would never, ever choose video unless they described something that I like had to see. But in general, I would never bother to choose video. So let's see if, I got to scroll down here a little bit. Mhm. Yeah. Got to read a blog or something. Well, 40% of people who have started listening to podcasts in the last year or two said they prefer video. And you'd think that I would have gotten that because when I worked in radio, people would ask all the time, like, what does the studio look like? Is there a camera in there? And I'd always think, like, why do you care? What do you want to see? Why do you want to see, what we're looking at or what we're doing? But yeah, 40%. And that's continuing to grow. So if, for people that are hesitant about video, if you thought about, okay, do I want to add video to the podcast? Imagine if instead we said, you're only going to reach 60% of your audience unless you add video. Now, do you want to add video? And I think at that point it becomes kind of a no-brainer, and especially when we think about that recommendation piece. So this was a recent episode of my podcast done by Lunch Entrepreneurs, a little over 700 views in the first week, plus 10 subscribers, and I've got a good-sized channel, right? But when we go a little bit deeper here and we looked at it, 2/3 of the views came from people who weren't subscribed, didn't know who I was. Maybe some of them had watched some of my videos before, but YouTube is now recommending stuff to people based on the topic. And in a way, podcast episodes are perfect for this because they're so well crafted to be about a one topic for one type of person. And then they recommend it. And if people like it, they'll show it to more people as well. So it's just a really, really powerful way that you can get your episodes discovered. Another thing that comes up sometimes, like, do I have to go back and add video from my old episodes? And if you're thinking about that, I would say absolutely not. Don't don't worry about that. You can just start adding video now. You can decide it's season 2 and start adding video. You don't have to necessarily go back and go to all of
And
the old episodes.
the beauty of that too is if you did have older episodes, maybe you could create a newer version of that same topic, especially if it worked before, for now with video. Like, it doesn't mean like, oh, I've already covered that before. What about a version for now? I know that we do this with video side, and hopefully everyone can hear me now. When I was off camera before, apparently it also nuked my microphone. So
Oh,
apparently,
I could still
yeah,
hear you. Okay, sorry
yeah,
about
that was
that.
first time with this. So yeah, we're gonna have a couple little bugs like that. But look, I'm sure whatever I said was absolutely amazing, and I'm sorry
I was
that
just nodding
yeah,
along to nothing.
yeah, that's it. That's a smiling and nodding. So now I'm down the bottom with you here as well.
Correct.
Yeah. So I think this is huge. YouTube recommended. Like, I think there's no other platform out there that is pushing your content as much as YouTube in terms of discoverability. But as you also said, the long-term play with YouTube. We have videos that are coming up on 10 years old that are still getting found on YouTube. They're still
Yeah.
having ads run on them. They're still helping people. They're adding value to the internet. And I think this is a deeper level conversation that we can bring in around this with podcasts and helping people at a deep level now on YouTube too.
Yeah, and something else to know too, Google shut down Google Podcasts, and last year, I want to say, but it was anyway, it's gone, And that was the default podcasting app on Android phone. And we all know there are literally, even if you're an iPhone person, there are billions of Android phones out there, right? And so YouTube Music is sort of becoming the new default app on Android phones. And your podcast won't be in YouTube Music unless you put it on YouTube. This is a flaw in the system. It's something I'm hoping they'll fix at some point, but currently that is the case.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm all in on the YouTube side of things. I pay for premium and I think it is the best investment ever. There's a lot of people who go, "Oh, why are you paying for remove ads?" I can't tell you how good the experience is. You a premium user?
I just like 2 months ago. And once
Okay.
I did it, I was like, how did I spend so much time going skip, skip,
Actually,
skip? Like,
I
this
think
is
you
so
sent me a message. You don't
I
realize
did.
how much time you save, but how much nicer the experience is on
Yeah.
YouTube without it. But in turn, that also means you get YouTube Music as well. So that became my default, removed Spotify or anything. And yeah, well played,
Yeah.
Google.
Yeah. So let's talk. You want us to talk about how to get started with this?
Let's do it.
All right. So a couple things to know. And if you if you've already got a show, we'll talk about kind of how it looks on YouTube if you're going to add it. But I just wanted to show this really quick. So when we started podcasting with YouTube in mind, and when I say we, I mean my wife Candy and I, because we actually hosted a morning radio program together for 15 years. So she was kind of part of the strategy behind this. So I want to give credit where credit due is to her. She's so smart and so creative. But we designed a slightly different approach. The majority of podcasts fail. It's some unreal number. Like if you get to episode 21, you've eclipsed 99% of podcasters or something like that. So the majority of them fail. So we took a different approach and we built the show the way that we built our radio show, and we built it out of modules. And so I don't have time to teach you this today, but you can learn this for free because I really think this is the way everyone should be doing their shows. So we call it modcasting instead of podcasting for module-based podcasting. And you can go to quitpodcasting.com after this if you want to learn how to do that. And we talk a little bit more about YouTube, as well as how I had a podcast episode earn $1,000 from someone who never even listened to it. So, which was a fun story. But videos versus podcasts on YouTube. This is the first thing that really comes up. Like, what's the difference? Is everything a podcast? And so podcasts in the simplest form are a specially designated playlist. So you add each new episode to a special playlist that you've said is a podcast in YouTube, and then it will get pushed out to YouTube Music as well. Okay, so that's what that does. In addition to that, when you go to the channel, it's going to appear in 3 different places. Okay, so first of all, there is a podcast tab that will get added to your channel once you add a podcast there. They will also appear on the videos tab because they are videos, and they also appear on the playlist tab because they are a playlist. So I think one thing for us to be aware of, and it's not a big deal, but when YouTube added podcasts, they were very much like, we got a good thing going here and we are not going to break it. Okay. So we're going to sort of add this on top of it. We're not going to change what we're already doing because we are obviously very, very successful. So it's not a perfect integration, but just be aware there are funny things like that. So why is my podcast showing up under video and things like that? And so I just like to bring those up so people are aware of it. They're not weirded out by it when they see that happen.
And this is a question that we get a lot as well. And I saw someone in the chat already asked. So when I'm uploading a podcast, is there something different I need to do? Or am I actually hitting upload and video, but it's a podcast? Like, I think, as you said, it can be a little confusing because we kind of got bits and pieces all over the place. And I'll let you answer that question, but it's changing, right? They are evolving this where it is now versus where it was not that long ago. It is more intuitive for people that just wanting to do one thing or the other.
Yeah. And it is, one of the things I've been thinking about a lot because I keep getting asked, okay, you've got a regular channel and a podcast on the channel. Like, how do they coexist? But when you first start, essentially, you're going to create a playlist that becomes your podcast. So in YouTube Studio, you just click the create button, just like you're doing anything else. You're going to click new podcast. And then from there, it'll basically ask you, do you want to take a playlist you already have and make it a podcast, which basically means you're just telling it as a podcast, or create a new one. And if you create a new one, just like with an audio podcast, you're going to put in a title, a description, and then cover art. Okay. So that's that first part. And then when you go to upload, the only difference is you are checking a specific playlist that is designated as a podcast. So if you can see on your screen here, depending on what screen size you're, watching on, you can see I have a few playlists that in that dropdown that all say podcast and a little tab on the right. So all I do is I check that box and then it gets added as a podcast. Now, you kind of can't see it because of the red line that's there, but there's actually another one underneath there that also says done by lunch entrepreneurs, and it says parentheses podcast. So I actually check two when I upload. One is the actual podcast playlist, but then the other one is I wanted my podcast to be featured on my channel page. So I made a second playlist that doesn't say podcast next to it. That does say podcast next to it that appears on the channel page. Now, you don't want to necessarily do that on your main podcast playlist because that will then show up in the YouTube Music app and things like that. So it'll be like, it'll be sitting there with a list of podcasts and you're basically saying to people, it's a podcast. And they're like, I know. So just a little, workaround hack that I did there with mine. But that's it. It is literally just checking one other box. I will say that when I started thinking more about podcasts performing well on YouTube, I think this is a good thing for the podcasting industry because the attention span is shorter on YouTube. And so when we start thinking about putting these things in both places, we really, when you start adopting what I think most people have, which are higher standards for YouTube, then the quality of your audio podcast is going to go up as well. Now, I don't want anyone to feel like that's I don't want that to like scare anyone out from doing it. Like, oh my gosh, it has to look like a YouTube video. That I also don't believe is true. I feel like we're seeing, and Justin, you can tell me, but I feel like we're almost seeing a shift into, I don't know if lo-fi is the right phrase, but like less editing, than what was there for so long. And I think that's also sort of a response to the TikTokification of our brains the last few years, where we're kind of like, maybe I just get to watch your face talk for a few minutes and that's okay.
I think there definitely is a shift to it, more less retention based editing. So we watch channels where it's just cut, sound effect, music, and it's exciting, but it's also short term because it really just gets us on edge. It's not relaxing content. Mm-hmm. So there is a big piece now of a lot less editing. Obviously, we want to remove bad takes and give a good experience for people. That's always the number one goal: good experience for your viewer or your listener. So with that in mind, though, we don't need to be over editing, over sound affecting and whatever, because it can have a negative effect. It can wear people out and your content can become mentally tiring for people as well if you're doing that too much. So, which is a massive opportunity for all of us then that aren't editors or professional podcast editors or anything like that. We can get our content, our message out there easier. And I think even looking at some of the tools and things that are available now, it's so much easier to make videos, to make podcasts and things than it ever has been before. We don't need to go and have the latest gear, the best gear, really expensive stuff. I know that, Jerry, you're a big advocate for this. You can use a lot of stuff that you already have or stuff that isn't going to break the bank as well. You don't need to go and have this $100,000 setup to be able to create this stuff. So we'll jump across. I see now you got a slide here. We can jump to that.
Yeah, I'm going where you're going. So
no, this is good. I didn't use this. You see my squirrel brain jump, but I see the tech and the questions and stuff in the comments as well.
Yeah, that's great. Let's serve the people that are here. I love it. So when it comes to gear, and especially if you've been doing audio, it's like, oh, now I got to go out and get an $800 Sony camera. I mean, I started with the same camera that I was using for Zoom calls, an old like $40 Logitech camera, and it was fine. Now I did upgrade, and now I have the Insta360 Link because I wanted to be able to start doing stuff in 4K. But again, it doesn't require a whole lot. You can also use the camera that's on your phone, and that's totally fine as well. Sometimes when I travel, I'll just use that. Lighting has gotten really affordable as well, but I always tell people, I'm like, face a window. This was the lighting on my YouTube video for years, and it was just me looking at a window, and that's all it took. So I just don't want people to, get intimidated by some of these additional pieces. And then the other one that comes up a lot is like backgrounds, right? Well, what do I put in my background? And you can see part of, can you bring me full screen for a second, Justin?
Yeah.
I've obviously designed a set here. I've got some very specific things. I have this "We all do better when we all do better" sign on the wall because that's one of my core values, and some other stuff, behind me. But one of the, one of the things people think is, oh, I've got to have this amazing, beautiful place. But I am literally in the corner of a room that is also has a hide-a-bed and a homework desk and a dresser full of tools. Like this is, it doesn't require a lot of space. So I think that's one thing that's important to keep in mind. I've also, like today, I filmed a video in my living room because I think, I saw this guy say this a few weeks ago and I thought it was so brilliant. As AI is eroding trust, he said, the more places you show yourself, the more trustworthy you are. And I thought that's probably true, right? Like if you're always in the same place, a year from now, there'll probably be able to be a virtual AI Jerry that can just stand here and talk. And, I don't know if he'll have the cool superhero t-shirts, but like that's where we're headed. And so he had just said, film more places. And it took this pressure off. So I filmed a video in my backyard a couple weeks ago and I filmed one out in the kitchen today. So, you don't have to have a set, I don't think, for this type of stuff, just a place you're comfortable.
Yeah, and I think then if we had to pick the most important piece, I know that there was comments from Doug in there around editing and around lighting and stuff as well. The audio is the most important piece always. If people can hear you, they can consume the content. People will look past a bad background. It's not like, I can't watch this. The content's amazing, but I can't watch it because what's in the background. Like that's not really a thought process. But if the background was bad, but the audio was good, it's like, all right, I'm still consuming. I'm learning for free. I'm consuming free content on YouTube or a podcast. It's all good. But if the audio is scratchy, the audio is bad, then people will switch off because it's annoying. So audio, that's the one thing that I think we all need to dial in. And look, you can just use your phone to get, there you go, a $14 microphone.
I was going to say, I got the $14 microphone that Justin talks about all the time, the Boya M1. And that's what I started on YouTube with, was my phone, a window, and this.
Yeah. And look, I'd say a big chunk of the videos on our channel were filmed with that. They were filmed in a very, very small room. Now we've got a bigger studio set up, but only now, we're 10 years in to this YouTube journey. You don't need it. And we don't have still a fancy background or anything. Mine's pretty much empty in the background. There's a couch, there's a bookshelf, it's all about the content. But now you've got me thinking, Jerry, I might need to start moving around a bit more so that, I'm really an AI. And
Not really here. Not really here. Yeah.
No, I'm typing quick.
Well, we should talk about the mistakes and before a couple days ago, Justin said, let's make sure we cover some of the common mistakes. And I generally focus on teaching people what to do and coaching them on what to do. And so I had to think about it for a second, but then I thought, these are definitely some common mistakes that people make. Before I do that though, I just wanted to talk through this really quick. Sometimes people say I can never do video, it takes too much work. And so I like to take people through this exercise. So audio podcasters, they record audio only for each episode without having to feel camera ready. And they're often very proud. Like, I got my hair messy and I put on my sweatpants and I record my episode and it's so, so cool. And then a video podcaster records video and audio simultaneously, right, for each episode. So I always say, you got to shower at least once a month to be camera ready. And then you can go through and do all of your stuff. Well, then the audio podcaster uses a transcript-based editor like Descript to quickly edit and publish each episode. And then same thing with the video podcaster, right? So editing now, because of tools like that, it's almost the same for audio and video, as long as you're willing to let a little bit of that perfectionism go. And then audio podcasters get camera ready to record a bunch of social media content to promote their podcast and to achieve all these other business objectives. And so once I started interviewing audio podcasters, they're like, I just recorded my sweats. I found out they were getting dressed up more than video podcasters were. But if you're a video podcaster, then you can literally pull all of your content, when you design it the right way, right out of your episode, and you don't have to record anymore. So you can record everything at once, and then you can wait I guess let's say 29 days again before you shower again, if that's something that you want to do. So that's kind of how I look at it. But let's talk about some of the mistakes. This photo always makes me laugh. So this is this was me recording some content and doing a live stream from a farmhouse in Port Stephens in Australia. I had to put my microphone up on a pot to get it high enough. And you can see this was the travel setup. I had some box that I put the laptop up on. But some common mistakes that I see with this. Number one is too many goals. So people say, I'm going to start a podcast. Same thing with YouTube channels. And they say, all right, I say, hey, what are your goals? What are your objectives? What do you want this to be? And they say, oh, okay, well, I want it to grow my audience, generate leads, generate sales, raise my authority, grow my email list. They list off all these things, or I'll sometimes show clients a list and they'll go, yeah, I want all those. But if you try and focus on everything, you're not going to achieve any of them. So really think about what is your primary goal for the show, and then maybe two others as a backup. Now, the good news is if you do those well, everything else usually happens. But you want to optimize everything you're doing for whatever that primary objective is, okay? Another mistake that I see quite a bit is skipping video. And we've kind of already talked about that quite a bit today, but it's just hard to grow. And there's a lot of missed opportunities without having video there. Third one, this is one that I was recently thinking about quite a bit, and that is holding off on selling. So if you're a podcast listener, I'm sure you've heard this, where somebody says, hey, if you, hey, thanks. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And by the way, if you want to work with me, then, then reach out, click the link in the show notes, right? And they just kind of throw away that selling. And selling doesn't mean buy something. Selling is whatever you want them to do. It could also mean asking them to share it, leave a review or anything like that. But I like to remind people that if they've gotten to that point in your episode, they're happy. They've already given, you've already given them lots of value. They're not mad because you're promoting your thing now. So do not hold back and give it whatever promotion that it happens to need. The fourth mistake that I see a lot, that I'm just going to call it hiding. We all have this fear of annoying our audience or annoying our friends and family. Now, one of the things I love about YouTube is I can put content out and YouTube will find the audience for it. And I don't have to go and now go and try and tell, please go watch, please go watch, please go watch. That's the beautiful thing about YouTube. In the beginning, I was absolutely telling everybody like that. But when I worked in radio, just to paint a picture, sometimes we would do a huge promotion. Maybe we were giving away a chance to win $100,000. And so for 2 full weeks before the contest started, we would promote, hey, coming up, you can win $100,000. And then for 4 full weeks while the contest was going on, every day for 6-8 times an hour, hey, you got your chance to win $100,000. Don't forget your chance to win $100,000. Here's what you got to do, over and over again. And so 2 weeks leading up, 4 weeks of promotion, without fail, the day after the promotion end, the phones would light up with people going, hey, I just heard about that $100,000 contest. When is that starting? When is that starting? So do not hide. Promote your episodes as much as you want. And when you get sick of doing it, do it again. Get sick of it again, do it again. And then maybe when you get sick of it the third time, maybe people are starting to be annoyed by it. Now, I will say the way you promote certainly makes a difference. And this is true for any of our content. You want to promote obviously for their benefit. So the way I always like to put it is you say, hey, I got a new episode, go check it out. Don't do that. Say, hey, if you want this result, I happen to upload or publish this thing that can help you, right? So then we're doing it from the listener benefit. So that's one of them, is hiding. And then the last one is not deciding it's important. This is something where if you decide that the podcast is important or the YouTube channel is important or both are important, then give it whatever it needs to be successful. And so if that means learning it, if that means, finding more time for it, if that means, investing in somebody to help you, anything like that, you want to make sure to do that. And if you can't decide it's important, it's probably not important. And that's totally okay as well. When I started this is YouTube, but when I started my YouTube channel, I said, okay, I want to learn YouTube. I want to see what this is going to be like. I'm going to upload a video every week for a year. And 5.5 months in, I was sitting with less than 100 subscribers, and I probably would have quit. I almost did quit multiple times, but then off it went. So all I'm saying with that is, if you are going to go in on this, then do whatever it takes to be successful. It's safer to, half-ass it, because then it's just it didn't work. Of course, I didn't really try. And believe me, I did this for years. So either decide it's important and give it what it needs, or decide it's not important, and that's totally fine as well.
Come back to this, because I resonate with so many of this. I'm looking at our YouTube journey, probably all of them, but the hiding, the holding back, and also deciding that it's not important. I mean, when we started 10 years ago, it was on the side. I was still doing video production work. Mike, my brother, was still working in startup businesses and was kind of like, oh, we'll just make these videos and throw them up without a strategy, without anything like that. It was just kind of something we did, expecting it to grow. But we also were really deciding it wasn't that important until we decided it was important. And that's when we had to, we're investing this time, effort, energy, money into making these YouTube videos, podcasts, whatever it is. Let's help people find them. Let's actually help have a return from this. But the hiding piece, that hits home. I never, it's crazy looking at this now, but I never shared any of our YouTube videos. I never told people I was doing it. I didn't subconsciously, I didn't want people to find them, yet I wanted people to find them.
Yeah.
And you look at that now, like it's just crazy. But I know that there's a lot of people that are stuck with that, and that they think if you just put it out there, it'll grow. And we hear about those people that get lucky with that piece. But I think it's much easier if you tell people like, hey, this is what I'm doing. If it's of interest to you, here's where it is. It's not that we need to be, spamming it or selling it to everyone. It's just letting people know if it's a fit for them, it's there. And just that shift in mindset, I wish I had that much earlier. That we do want people to find this stuff.
I always like to use the analogy, like, if I was walking down the street and it's pouring rain and you're standing there and you've got an extra umbrella, you think if you say, hey, do you want an umbrella? I'm going to be like, what? Are you spamming me? Leave me alone, right? No, you are solving a problem that I have, or you are sharing something that I'm interested in. And if I'm not, I can just say, no, thanks. The rain's warm and romantic, or whatever it might be. But yeah, as long as you're leading from that. And although I will say, in the beginning, when our if you first launch something like this and our self-esteem is, as low as it can get, the imposter syndrome is, mile high. It's okay. Let your friends and family support you, even if they're not quite right. Don't tell them to go subscribe, because that'll mess up the algorithms. But, let them support you a little bit there. That's okay. But after that, it's just about, hey, if you want this, I have this thing I made. That's it.
Yeah. It's crazy. The mind games. It's all mind games. So I know we got a bunch of questions coming through, and I do want to get to those. But just really quickly, I know that you went through the gear and stuff that you're using. Do you have, like, in terms of the editing side, because editing piece is the piece that we find that most people get stuck on, and that most people hate. And I would imagine it's the same on the podcast side, even though that is kind of a different world to me as well. So I know that for us, we're always looking at different AI tools and stuff, because that place is changing so quick. Are there any tools that you're using right now, AI or not, that you would recommend to someone getting started? And also then, what are you using? Because the two, I imagine, could be different. Someone just getting started, and then what do you use?
So for a while, I would recommend two different ones, and I'll tell you what they both are. But I've recently just said, there's no, unless somebody already knows and likes the other one, there's no reason for them to go with that one. But the one that I is a beautiful tool, is riverside.fm. It's great. It'll record high quality. You can record on both sides. So if you have a guest, it'll record them in high quality, you in high quality. It'll sync it up in the cloud. And then there's some editing stuff. The one that I use and pay for, and is Descript. Descript will do everything I just described in Riverside, except there are way more editing features. And what I like to tell people, when I first started my video podcast, I was like, okay, I got to edit this. Well, I figured out how to edit in Descript, hired my friend's daughter, and she was editing each episode in about 10 minutes. And so a few of the things that Descript does: first, it has transcript-based editing, where if you edit edit the transcript, the video will match, which other platforms are now adding. But they have this thing called remove or shorten word gaps. It'll take out all the pauses. They have remove retakes that'll take out if you said something more than once, it'll take all of that out. My favorite is if you are doing a show with like a co-host and a sidekick or a guest or anything like that. It's called automatic multicam, and it'll automatically switch who's showing on the camera, kind of like Justin's been doing manually during this live, depending on who's talking. So some of the times it'll show, like, it'll show me talking. Right now it might show both of us because Justin's being a good listener and nodding along. And then other times it would show Justin. And it does it in like 3 seconds. Yeah, it's AI. Yeah. So that was the thing. We would literally, I would record the episode, and then my editor would go in, trim off the front, trim off the back. If there was a coughing fit or something in the middle, she'd take it out, but otherwise we wouldn't do anything in the middle. We would do automatic multicam, and then they have templates in there where you can quickly apply like banners and graphics. And so throughout the episode, we had banners and graphics, and that was it. And it does not have to be hard now. And one of my members just yesterday described it to Descript in the best way that I've ever heard it, and I'm going to use it all the time now. They said, you know what Canva did for graphic design? That's what Descript does for audio and video editing. I was like, yes, it's the Canva. Like, people get that reference, right? It's the Canva of video editing.
That's so great. And look, I mean, our recommendation now is pretty much the same for the video side as well as podcast. Then we are recording directly into Descript, so I can record 4K into Descript, and then our editors log in to our Descript account and they download the videos and whatever from there. We have someone that does a base edit, so they use the AI tools to remove all my bad mistakes, and there's a lot, the retakes, ums, ahs, so's, all of that in a couple of clicks. And then we are still finishing using DaVinci Resolve, so you can export your timeline or whatever through. I know that you know this. I'm just but I love Descript. We use it now for. We just shot another masterclass, another piece of training that we're going to put up on Skillshare. It was all done in Descript. So all of our YouTube content as well. So an amazing tool. And Riverside, I think, look, if I had to do an interview, if this was for a podcast or something, and I know Riverside does live streaming as well, it was a tough call as to which one of these platforms do I want to use for this. And obviously we still had a couple little bugs in this. I'm still working it out, but there's so many tools now. And I think that the ease for people to create content, there has never been an easier time. There has never been a better time with tools like Descript, like Riverside. I love Riverside for the quality of the interview piece. I think that's awesome.
And they do live streaming, like you said, which Descript won't do. And 2 years ago, I couldn't even teach like the methods that we teach, because it would have been too much work for the average. I primarily work with online entrepreneurs. It would have been too much work. I would have been like, yeah, you can do all this stuff, and all you need is 10 hours a week. They would have been like, what? Now we teach it. It's like, you can do all this stuff, and all you need is like 60 to 90 minutes a week. And it's because of these tools, and they're only getting better.
And so another piece on the Descript side of things, because I think it's been a game changer for us, is that if you're someone that is looking at hiring a video editor, this can actually lower the barrier to that even more, because all you need, if you're using a tool like Descript or one of those tools that's going to transcribe it and allow you to edit as if you're editing a Word document, you don't need a video editor in that regard. You could use a VA, a virtual assistant, have someone just help you remove the bad takes and verify what AI is doing is good, and you'll be able to get to the outcome much faster. I love that. Anything that helps people create content, podcasts or videos faster. My
friend's daughter that I hired to edit my video podcast, because we were getting ready to go overseas. And I was like, because at the time I was live streaming one of them, I didn't want to have to like edit it afterwards. I was like, it was 4 a.m. local time. I wanted to do the live stream and go back to bed. I was like, I need somebody else to do this. And even though she was 18, I don't know, sometimes some people think like, oh, well, kids today know how to do everything tech-wise. She'd never edited a video in her life. But with Descript, she was able to do it in about 10 minutes, which was great.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so I've actually seen a couple of questions about what software I'm using. I know we're segueing a little bit here, but I'm actually using EVMux right now. I had this almost set up in Ecamm because that is my go-to favorite tool. But I thought, given that we're bringing in guests, I was tossing up between Riverside and EVMux. Previously, StreamYard was my go-to, but we had some serious issues with that, and I now can't trust it multiple times. So EVMux now is what I'm using for this stream. Couple of little things that I need to sort out, but so far I'm loving it. I think, the quality seems good, and it seems easy enough to click around everything. Who knows? But I think this is working well. Cool. All right, let's jump into some questions. Have you seen any that have stood out to you? I'm scrolling back through now. I'll feature some on screen here.
I was going to say, I wish I had the eyeballs to do that. I have not been able to. Occasionally I'll see one and then it's gone. But do you want to maybe find a couple and put my slides up real quick? And I just want to share a couple more things here, especially if people, have to leave before Q&A. So I love to share this story. There's a podcast on YouTube, and it is the Modern Wisdom Podcast. And, when I took the screenshot, they were on episode 738. But they said episode 1, single cheap mic, shot on a phone, no lighting. So they're sitting in a room, one microphone, no, like they're using overhead fluorescent lighting, no subscribers in the beginning. And now they've got millions of subscribers, and now they've added a lot more to it. But it does, the best thing you can do with this is figure out what your strategy is going to be and just get going. And, I love to mention this too. If you're watching this now or later on replay, you want to ask me anything privately, I love talking about this stuff. So I'm at Mr. Jerry Potter on all the social platforms. And if you want to learn our module-based strategy that we used as radio broadcasters that allowed us to create high quality content in less time, because we were filling 20 hours a week. And without that, these radio corporations would have gone bankrupt. We do teach that. And you can learn it. Just go to quitpodcasting.com. That's where we teach about modcasting. And you can also hear the story about how my podcast earned $1,000 from someone who didn't even listen to it. So quitpodcasting.com. And, the number one regret of people with a successful podcast and or YouTube channel is they didn't start sooner. So definitely encourage you to get going with this if it feels like it's right. And like we talked about, if you've decided that it's important. Because the only thing that will happen in the future is if it works, you'll go, I wish I'd started sooner. That's all. Just wish I started sooner.
That's it. Yeah. No one's ever gone the other way.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And I absolutely love this. The sign that you have in your background there. We all do better when we all do better. I think that's why we get along so well. We're all about adding value to the internet, all about helping people with the stuff that we're geeking out on. And I think this is definitely for anyone out there, and this is the opportunity, I think, is that we've all got the stuff that we geek out on. There's stuff that if someone stopped you in the middle of the middle of the day, it was raining, Jerry's analogy, the stuff that we would want to stop and talk to those people and to help them. And I think if you can create your business, your lifestyle, your YouTube channel, your podcast, whatever, off from that place of I get to talk about this stuff, I get to show up and help people with this stuff, it's way more fun. And for those days where you're not motivated or whatever, you're going to be able to get out of that much, much faster to get back to having those conversations and to helping people with the stuff that you want to help people with. So I love that you've built your business around that side of things. Definitely go and check. I think there's links in the description to where you can follow Jerry as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. And
cool.
to add to that, like you brought up, whatever you're an expert in, like you already know that part of it. And so if you're trying to learn YouTube, then, that's what Justin and Primal Video are here for. They're just showing you how to package what you already know. Right. And then, I do the same thing with podcasting. And so I always like to remind people when they feel like, oh my gosh, this is a lot. It's like, remember, you're already an expert at this other awesome thing. We're just, you're just seeing how to package it so that you can reach the people that need you.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Okay. So I've gone back in time and we'll go through some of these questions.
Great.
This one's from Sarah. Is that all there? Yeah. Any thoughts on Patreon, Spotify integration for audio podcasts? Been meaning to investigate that since my podcast is hosted on Patreon and YouTube.
Monetizing podcasts there's a ton of different ways that you can do it. And I guess I would look at it like industry by industry. And I'm not familiar with this specifically, but I'm assuming basically people can subscribe to your podcast. I know more and more of the podcasting platforms, including Apple, are adding an opportunity to have a subscription tier or a member tier, just like YouTube has done. So I think when you're thinking about monetizing, I look at it as, do I want to build something and really go like deeper with people and monetize that way, which is what I do, where it's like, hey, if you're ready to learn more, come and we've got programs and coaching and stuff that can help you. Or do you want to kind of do it on a massive scale, a bigger scale where people are paying $5 a month, $10 a month? So to me, I've never looked into these myself because it's so much more, it's so much easier to help people on a higher level and support your business revenue wise by not looking for things that are $5 or $10 a month. But again, if you've already got a loyal audience and you could, doesn't hurt to turn it on and see what happens. It's kind of like the buy me a coffee thing. I know some people who they said, yeah, I just dropped the link in and I get $100 a month extra and I never promote it. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's cool. Who wouldn't take an extra $100?
Free coffee.
Yeah.
Okay, next one here. Do you recommend uploading a video podcast on YouTube via regular uploads or by the podcast tab? We did kind of cover that, but yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah, I mean, wherever you have an upload button, you can upload it, and you just need to click the correct playlist so that it gets added to your podcast feed. But outside of that, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I really think that that's something that they need to work on. I think I did see on one of my channels, I now have under the create, there was upload and then upload podcast was a separate one. And then on my other channels, I didn't see that. So
Oh, I haven't
this
seen
is
that
where,
yet. Okay.
yeah. And look, there's so many things that YouTube is constantly testing that most of them, from what I've seen, or I would say most of them, a lot of them never make it through to being
Yeah.
like the main thing. So yeah, you upload it as if it's a video. One thing interesting, actually, when we were talking about this, is that YouTube is now auto detecting videos that would be suitable for podcast listeners and viewers as well. We've had 2 videos of ours that have been now auto detected as a podcast to test. Actually, one that you created on our channel on how to start a podcast, it's actually auto detected that as a podcast because it thinks that there's enough value in there for someone to be able to listen to what's being said and still have a good experience, even without watching. So I thought that was interesting.
Occasionally, someone will ask, should I just make everything a podcast so all my videos can be in YouTube Music and I get, so much more? But you just mentioned the key part is the user experience. How are people going to think about your channel if they're listening to a podcast in YouTube and in YouTube Music and all you're doing is showing something on the screen or something that they can't see? I always equate it to if you've ever listened to like a stand-up comedy album and the audience is clearly dying laughing at something you can't see, how frustrating that is. It's that same experience, I think.
Yeah, I think it's the same as when you click on a video and there might be someone speaking a different language, but your thumbnail image and all of that stuff was all, say, English, and you get there and it's subtitles. Like, well, that's it's not really a bait and switch, but it's not what I thought. So I think viewer expectation, we want to match that wherever we can, give the viewer a good experience. Next question here. Podcast add to your watch hours?
Yeah. Basically, if they can show ads in front of it, then it adds to your watch hours. One thing that does come up sometimes is people say, I have an audio only podcast. Is it going to mess up my YouTube channel? And I don't have a definitive answer for that, but I think if I had an audio only podcast and I had a successful YouTube channel already, and I had no intention of adding video, I would probably put it on a separate channel just to get it in the YouTube Music app. Some people say, "Oh yeah, I put up my audio episodes on YouTube and I get discovered," and I'm sure that happens sometimes, but it's obviously not the norm. It's just it's not the expectation. It'd be like if somebody turned on Netflix and hit play and it was a static image, right? So, but yeah, that is something that comes up sometimes. But yeah, it absolutely adds to your watch hours.
Awesome. This one's from Doug. What if you're starting a brand new podcast with both audio and video? Any recommendations?
In terms of, I don't know.
Let's say getting started. So I had a couple of questions around this too. For someone just starting out, what's the benchmark? What's the bare minimum? Is it 1 episode? Is it 5 episodes? I'm hearing all different things. If someone is just getting started, brand new podcast.
So there used to be this idea, and it was a good idea, that when you launch a podcast, you should launch with a minimum of 3 episodes. And that way you would do a big push. And the advantage of that would be if you promoted your brand new show and somebody went and checked it out, hopefully at least one of those 3 really sounds like something they're interested in, right? So let's say, Justin, you started a podcast about, growing your business with video like you do here on Primal Video. And the only episode you had was about live streaming. And somebody goes there and like, "Oh, I don't live stream," right? They're not going to do it. But if you had 3 different topics, odds are one of them would be interesting to them. The other advantage is if they listen to one and they love it, they can listen to another one and then another one. And we always say like bingers or buyers. I mean, when somebody consumes multiple pieces of content back to back, they become much more nurtured and much more loyal to you as a brand or as a person or anything like that. And so that used to be the case. A lot of the times when people are getting started now, they worry about the content treadmills. Like, okay, so if I'm going to publish weekly, I have to publish weekly for the next 50 years, like until I'm dead or, whatever it might be. And, I like to remind people of a couple things around this. One, I often will say, just publish 1 a week. And if you want to use that, big promotion launch thing, then wait 3 weeks and then announce the big thing. And then you still have 3 episodes. 2, once upon a time, the reason that you would publish once a week is because you wanted to become the habit in somebody's life. Like, oh, Tuesday morning, I download this podcast about Monday night sports and I listen to it on the way to work. However, there are so many podcasts now, and most people don't listen to every episode of most podcasts. And so the odds of anyone starting a new show and becoming a habit now are way lower than they were 10 years ago, obviously. So that's another reason I think you could go to, bi-weekly easily, or you can do seasons. But I like to help people move away from this idea that, oh my God, I have to publish every single week. I now do one every other week. So my YouTube channel has a regular video one week and then a podcast episode the next. On the audio side, it's just every other week in that way. And it's fine. There's so much content out there. There is only, so much, like when I first started my podcast, I was like, I'd finish an episode or finish, 1 week, and then I'd have to go promote the next episode. And I'm like, oh, but the last one's still good. I want to promote it some more. So that's another great thing, is you can really give each episode more love that it may deserve if you're putting out good stuff by not publishing quite so frequently.
And so just on this as well, doing the podcast, doing the YouTube content, they're on similar topics, right?
For you? Yes. Well, and this is something that you had first said to me, straight from YouTube, same audience, same channel. If you are doing something that's for a different audience, then, podcast needs to be on another channel. But, YouTube channel, I started mine on another channel at first. Then I'm like, what am I doing? I don't want to manage 2 channels. So I moved it back to the main channel.
So that was a question I had someone send through as well. Like, I'm thinking of starting a channel, starting a podcast, already has an existing channel, has around 1,000 subscribers. They're like, is this separate? Because I see Diary of a CEO, what's that guy's name? He created a brand new channel just for the podcast. So I think my answer to that is very much the same as yours. Same audience, same channel. But if it was a channel that you hadn't used for a long time, it was, not getting any traffic or whatever, it maybe doesn't matter as much. But at the same time, if you already have 1,000 subscribers on a channel, you're not starting from nothing. Like, we can get that engine going as well. But I think the main thing is the audience, as far as I'm concerned with that.
Well, and you brought up Diary of CEO. People bring up Joe Rogan all the time, and it's like, remember, these guys were putting their podcasts on YouTube before podcasts were on YouTube. So a lot of their best practices, or whatever they do, they were doing it in a different world, and they just haven't shifted, and they're so big, they don't have to. But now, if you want to manage 2 channels, that's totally fine. And if you're going to do a podcast about, horseback riding, and your main channel is about, cooking, then that's probably going to be, 2 different channels.
I personally couldn't imagine going all in and running 2 different channels. I got enough gray hairs here from one, but hey,
I've been tempted, but I always remind myself, I'm like, no, there's other stuff that I want to do in life.
Cool. I got a few more questions are going through. I can see you guys are still adding new ones to there. I'll get there.
Great.
And obviously, we've hit top of the hour. So, Jerry, I'm mindful of your time as well. So we'll see if I can filter through these. What program are you using to switch slides views during the live podcast? During this now, I'm using EVMux. Jerry, what were you using for your slides? You had Keynote? That you were
my slides are in Google Slides.
Google Slides.
And if I use slides in a podcast episode, I record, as we mentioned earlier, into Descript. And in Descript, you can record your screen and your camera at the same time on 2 different feeds. And so I just record it that way. And then in editing, I just switch back and forth as necessary.
Nice. Question from Doug. Is the run of show for a podcast any different than a YouTube video? If so, what's the difference? So on the YouTube side of things, we teach, which is similar to what you teach, but a little bit different as well. We go hook, intro, content, bonus, call to action. How does that relate or flow over to a podcast?
It is essentially all content is the same, right? Like what Justin just said, you could do on YouTube, you could do as a podcast, you could do it in a blog post, it works in all of the different places. I will say that if you were doing an audio only podcast, I might advise differently. But in this world where we're doing, where I'm literally saying, if you're not going to do video, then you better really love podcasting, because it probably is not going to grow without it. They're absolutely similar. We do teach one other thing, and this is one of our modules in our modcasting approach. And again, like I said, you can learn it all for free at quitpodcasting.com. But we teach having a piece of content at the end of your show that's called a TSL module. And you can add this to an existing podcast as well. And this is the quick overview. We talk more about it in that thing. But essentially, it's a piece of content related to the original content that goes at the end of the show, but it also can stand alone as its own content. And here's what it does. First of all, TSL stands for time spent listening, which was one of the things we were rated on in radio. So we were rated on how many people overall were listening, which was called the CUME, and then the time spent listening. So how long they listen. So the longer somebody listened, the better. We want people to listen the whole episode, right? So you basically come up with a related, similar piece of content on the same topic that goes at the end of the episode, which makes people want to listen until the end. This is kind of like the bonus that you teach, Justin, for YouTube, a little bonus tidbit at the end. But with this, it always stands completely on its own so that you can take it out and make it a short or a reel or something else. And so you specifically record it that way, and that's how you grow your podcast. And in addition to that, we actually put it after the call to action to get people to listen to the call to action. And again, if you're doing it right, the audience shouldn't be like, oh, here comes the solicit, right? If you're doing it right, it's like, here's value, 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 value. Here's another way I can give you value, but we always keep them by teasing this TSL module that comes up right afterward. And so once we started doing that in podcasts, and I think it works on YouTube as well, the amount of the watch time goes up, the listen time goes up, and then the conversion goes way up because they're actually listening through what you want them to do instead of going, if you'd like to work with me, next, which is what I think people did with podcasting for a long time.
Awesome. Next one is from Doug. I've gone through and started a few of these, so we can go through these a bit quicker.
Well, we got to address what about cooking for your horses?
Yeah, I thought that was great. I had to feature. Yeah, okay.
That's perfect,
Suki. Yeah. Finding a channel name that isn't taken by another podcast is especially challenging. Any suggestions? How do you come up with a podcast name? I know that you've just gone through rebrand.
Yeah, well, so when it comes to a podcast name, if you're trying to figure out what your podcast is going to be, the first thing I would do is I would try and come up with a unique premise. The biggest thing in all content is everyone is going to assume they know what you're going to say unless they have a reason not to. Okay. And so, for example, and as AI content comes out, even more so, right? So imagine somebody puts up a video and it's like 3 exercises to do for stronger triceps and biceps. So anyone who's ever looked at weightlifting is going to be like, oh, okay, so curls and tricep extensions and push-ups or something like that, right? We're just going to assume. And so I think it's really important. I think this is true for YouTube channels now too, that you have some kind of a unique premise for why is your show different than all the other ones out there? And there's a lot of different ways that you can do this that we teach, but start there, then think about what your name's going to be. The biggest thing with names though, it needs to be short, memorable, and easy to spell. I was a guest on a podcast a couple months ago. I can't remember the name of it. Even if I could remember it, I couldn't tell you how to find it because they took a clever, software company way of naming it and took the vowels out of one of the words or something like that. And so if somebody cannot remember the name of your show or spell it when they search for it, they cannot recommend it to a friend. And even if they recommend it to a friend, that friend cannot find it because they couldn't remember it or they couldn't spell it. So that's why I always start with that. I have a video on my channel about naming your podcast, but that's the biggest thing is make it, as short as possible, easy to say and easy to spell.
Yep. We've all tried to do that, and it's pretty frustrating where someone's like, hey, go find this, and it's got a 1 instead of an I or something.
Instead of an I or an L,
yeah.
I had one woman hire me to do an audit of her podcast last year, and I was like, oh, that's a pretty clever name. And I went in and I looked, and there were 9 other podcasts with the exact same name in the exact same niche. And I just went, oh, this is going to be a problem. And they were all actively publishing. Now, if you search and there's another one and they haven't published in 3 years, that's probably fair game. You could probably take that podcast name. But if there's another one out there actively publishing, even if it's small, unless you already have a big audience, I would not do it. I would try and find something new.
And so for that, the search piece, you're just looking on Apple Podcasts on YouTube.
Yeah. Okay. Apple Podcasts. I mean, give it a Google search as well, just to kind of see what might be out there.
Do you go as far as checking trademarks?
I have never done that. I mean, it would probably be a good idea depending on what you thought. I mean, we did that for Done by Lunch Entrepreneurs, but it's the first time I've ever done that. But I guess it would depend on how big you thought it was going to be. If you already have a brand or a YouTube channel, then maybe it has a name, the same name as that, or a similar name to that too.
Yeah. Okay. What's important about your podcast square image cover art? Any do's or don'ts? Because they are a different size, right? The cover art is a square,
Versus a
and
YouTube
then
thumbnail. Yeah.
yeah,
So your episode on YouTube will still have a landscape thumbnail, just like a YouTube video, but your podcast cover art is a square. And the most important thing to remember is when somebody looks it up in the search on here on a phone, it's going to be so tiny. And so we always say, like, literally, this is one of the reasons you don't want a 10-word title, too. Make the title as big as you can possibly make it so that they can see it when it's small. It will be small most of the time. Now, if you want a version on your website that you can make bigger and you change what it is, or have it look a different way, that's fine. But your official cover art is going to show up super tiny most of the time. And so that's the first thing. Second, people are attracted to faces, so we like, recommending faces. And then the third thing is high contrast, because again, it's going to show really small. So when you're choosing your color, none of this, dark blue on slightly darker blue. When you're doing your text, right? You want black on white or white on black or whatever it might be.
and so that's the same with our YouTube thumbnails, right? We
Yeah.
just want them to
Yep.
stand out, how to people quickly see what it's about. We're no like where we started, and where YouTube started to grow for us was where we started to put a box behind our text. Not from a graphic design perspective, but so the viewer can see the
contrast.
text and it can easily read it.
Yeah.
All right, we'll take a few more that I got here, and then we will wrap this up. Okay, what was the next one here from Suki? Can you have more than one podcast thread? I thought YouTube only allowed one. So yeah, on your screen share, you showed multiples where I know when they launched, it was one.
Oh, yeah. I don't remember that limitation, but I've got multiples on there. I have two that are actual podcasts. Others I've added because I've been recording a tutorial for YouTube. I probably need to go back in and take them off. But yeah, you can have multiples. I don't know if there is a limit. I will say that when you set up a YouTube channel, there's 3 levels of features for YouTube. And if you have not unlocked all of them, you won't be able to add your podcast to it. So you can go into your settings and then channel. And then underneath that, there's 3 levels. One you get when you set up your channel, but then for one of them, you need just like a cell phone number. And another one you can do like video or upload an ID. There's a bunch of different ways to do it, but you have to unlock those. It's free, but you got to do it before you can add a podcast.
Yeah, it's the same as if you want to upload custom thumbnail images or upload more than 15-minute YouTube
Longer than
videos.
15
You need
minutes.
to verify your channel. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, but there's no, sometimes people say, so I have to have 500 subscribers or no, there's nothing like that. You just have to do it. And,
verify you're a real human. Yeah.
Where
can we learn more about podcasting?
Go to quitpodcasting.com, QUIT podcasting.com. We actually, we just released this the other day. It's a free sort of deep dive into podcasting in 2025, including the YouTube part. And we go through I show you exactly the 5 modules to start with and everything about that. So we just released it the other day. Like a few thousand people are already going through it. And you can check it out at quitpodcasting.com. Nice. I love a good URL.
That's it. And I liked it that it's quit. And
yes.
It doesn't, people are like, but I want to learn it. Yeah.
I have to say module. We have another one that's the new way to podcast.com. I mean, I'm a little bit of a domain junkie, but yeah.
Yep. Is it beneficial to take clips of a podcast into shorts to grow traffic? I know this is kind of something that's thrown out there a lot. All you need to do for a content strategy is do one and cut it up. What are your thoughts on this? And what do you do?
So with, when we were first trying to figure out, okay, we've got podcasts and then how do we grow it? We know that when you start on YouTube, it can take time. There are those stories that, happen overnight, but for most people, it takes time. And so if you want to, advance that, short form videos are the fastest way to do this. And it doesn't matter if it's, YouTube Shorts is good because it's on the same platform as your podcast, but also TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook Reels, and even vertical videos on LinkedIn now are huge, 2 minutes or less. And so absolutely take clips and put them out there, again, vertical on whatever other platform you might be focusing on. I'll tell you, I teased this that it's in that other thing, but the way I made $1,000 for my podcast from somebody who didn't even listen to it, I pulled a clip of one of my episodes. I put it out as an Instagram reel. I have about 4,000 followers on Instagram. This thing reached over 23,000 people, right? So thousands of people. I think it only reached 300 of my followers. My followers were not interested. And, so it did really, really well. And a lot of people saw that clip and they went and they listened to the podcast, which was great. one woman, whenever somebody joins one of my programs, we say, hey, where did you hear about Jerry Potter? And she said, oh, I saw this. She brought up the topic and everything. I saw this Instagram reel, and then I looked into you and signed up. And once I got a chance to talk to her, I said, so did you like you saw that and then you went and listened to the podcast and then joined the email list? And she goes, no, I didn't. I never listened to the podcast. I just saw the clip, looked into you, and then she signed up for an annual in one of my membership programs. And so it is really effective. I think it is the, fastest way to grow a show now is by taking clips like that and then putting them out as short form videos, assuming you don't have money to spend on it. Obviously, if you've got a marketing budget, then, that can potentially trump everything.
And so was that clip, what was happening in that clip? Like, is this
it was an interview show.
Okay.
And it was just me. It wasn't even featuring me. It was my guest, like, saying something really valuable. That was the other funny part. And so it was, that's all it was. We were talking about tools, and Opus Clip is it's a tool that will basically go through a whole episode and pull out, like, turn it in clips. And it keeps getting better. Opus keeps getting better, but I still will not use it regularly because in my mind, there's too much editing to be done afterward. Randomly enough, that was a clip that Opus pulled when I was testing it once, and it clearly it got that one right. So
yeah,
but yeah, that's all it was just a clip from the show. And I talked a few minutes ago about the TSL module where you make it so that it can stand on its own. That's part of the whole modcasting approach. Is you're just before you record the episode what you're going to take out afterward. Huge time saver.
Yeah. It's going to make it easier for you to plan your podcast and do the repurposing piece as well. If you've got like the end goal in mind, work backwards.
Yeah. We started calling it multi-purposing because I look at repurposing as like, all right, I've got all this content. Now let me slog through it and see what I can pull out of it that might not be as good as the original content. But when you approach it in the right way, the stuff you pull out is going to be just as good or even better than the original piece of content. And that's where it works really, really well.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we'll take a couple more, then we'll wrap this up. Jerry, again, super grateful for your time here. Okay. Do you upload the video podcast to YouTube and the audio version of the same podcast to Spotify, Apple on the same day?
I do. I don't know that you have to unless you were very adamant about like promoting new episodes every Thursday. So my podcast, Done by Lunch Entrepreneurs, happens to come out on Thursday. Before it came out on Monday because I was trying to do a new YouTube video and podcast episode every week. Even with a full-time editor now, that was too much for my brain. So now, like I said, I'm alternating podcast episode, video, regular YouTube video. But it certainly makes more sense for your audience. That being said, I think it's always good to look at the times that you should publish. So on YouTube, you can see when your audience is most active. So my YouTube videos usually come out at 6 a.m. my time. And I'm on the West Coast of the United States, but I release my podcast episodes at midnight so that they are in there when somebody opens their app in the morning, wherever they are, whatever time zone they're in.
Next one here. Okay, we mentioned seasons. You said like you could change the season of your podcast. What are the benefits of having podcast seasons?
Well, some seasons started with some of these like, serial crime shows. And similar to a TV season, there'd be a thread that went through the whole thing. But for most of us, here's what I love about seasons. And I don't do seasons because I'm on this every other week thing. Here's what I love about seasons. When you start a new show, we always recommend talking about it 4 to 6 weeks before it launches, if you can. There's a couple of things around this. One is, what people want, what they can't have. So if you start promoting your podcast before it's available, people want it more. It's this, it's a grass is always greener thing. But plus then you can get feedback from people and ask them what they want and develop all these narratives around it so that when it comes out, people are already excited for it as opposed to 3 days in going, well, that was a lot of work for 0 downloads, right? That's what we want to avoid. And so that's one thing is talking about it ahead of time. But you can only do that once when you first launch, unless you do seasons. If you do seasons, I look at it as then you can, hey, our new season is coming out in 2 weeks. Here's what we've got planned. Watch for it soon. What do you want to hear? You can almost do the whole, hoopla. I don't know why I use that word, hoopla all over again. And then same thing with the season finale. Hey, coming up this week is our season finale. And if you haven't caught up, go back and catch up on the other episodes. So it almost makes the promotion less promotional when you do seasons. And then the other part is just for your own mental health. take a break. Nobody should be trying to stick to weekly podcasting if it's burning them out.
I like that if it's seasons, you could totally change approach with it. I mean, I'm not saying
Yeah.
just like burn the thing down to the ground, but if you're like, okay, let's take stock on what worked, what didn't work, what did we enjoy, what didn't we enjoy, and what does the next version, the next season look like? I
Yeah.
think that's a big piece of that too. And I know that it's a lot of people think that they're stuck in their thing, but this is what I've always done. Like, it's hard to pivot and to evolve, but I think I haven't seen too many YouTube channels that haven't pivoted and adjusted as they've gone. And I know that your channel now is totally different to where it started, as with ours.
Yeah, for sure.
So be open to that and just try test stuff. Okay, I got 3 more questions here that I have starred, and then we'll wrap it up.
Sounds good.
I'm interested in starting a podcast, but I'm not sure what topic. So how would you suggest someone come up with their topic?
So if you're doing this, first of all, the first thing you have to decide is what is the goal of your podcast? And we talked about that during the mistakes session earlier. Go back and watch it if anybody joined late and didn't see that. One of the mistakes people make is they have too many goals. The other mistake is they have no goals. So first thing to do is decide what your goal is. And I'll talk about 2 different paths really quick. If your goal is tied to your business, like I said, I mostly work with online entrepreneurs, then your topic needs to be something that is interesting to people who you want to hire you or, buy your stuff or whatever it might be, right? If your goal is so that's kind of that's the entrepreneur route of podcasting. One of the things I always like to say is if you're an entrepreneur with a podcast, you can be profitable way sooner, because literally you could have 1 listener, and if it's the right person in the first episode, you can make money. We've had people in our program do that. Wow, just published 13 hours later, sold a copy of my book. The other route is sort of my podcast is the business. And that can be great. It's just a much longer road. Like, you got to work for free for a long time until you get 5, 10,000 downloads per episode in the first week that each one comes out. And then you can probably make some good money from sponsorships. But that being said, if you're going to go that route, so again, if it's your business, what topic is going to attract people to your business? Probably whatever your expertise is. If it's the hobbyist, what topic is going to attract sponsors? And sometimes the more specific you can be, the better. I have a friend that hosts a pretty popular real estate podcast for real estate agents. And early on, he was getting sponsors. And I'm like, what are your numbers like? And he would share. And I'm like, how are you getting sponsors? But because all his audience was real estate agents and people wanted to reach real estate agents, then he was able to monetize relatively easily, as opposed to if your audience is moms or women or dads or something like that, right? That's not as specific.
And we've seen that with YouTube channels as well. I mean, we've got members in our accelerator program that have channels around 1,000 subscribers that some of them are doing multiple 5-figure brand deals every month because their audience is so niche, so specific that the brands are happy to pay because they know that it's a super engaged audience and that they're really interested in that product or that thing. The other side of it too is also affiliates. It is something that needs to take time to build up. But from podcast 1, you could start to mention some of the things that you use that could have an affiliate link. But the linking piece is a bit different on the podcast too, right? This is what would you recommend if someone had a link? You would just to buy the domain or to go somewhere? I mean, you've got the description on YouTube, but it's kind of buried in the YouTube Music app.
It's called show notes, and it's still there. And most avid podcast listeners know where to find it. But what we did in radio and what I do recommend, because it is an audio thing, if you can get a nice short domain, like the quitpodcasting.com, that's so much better than, if you want to learn this, just go to donebylunch.co/ I'm making this up. It's not a real URL, but donebylunch.co, not com.co/ modcast / learn. Like, you don't want to send anybody to that stuff. Even if it's just a .com/ something, that's still way more for the brain to remember. So I like doing the custom domain for, $12 to $20 a month. It's usually worth it.
Awesome. Cool. All right. So there's a couple left. Thoughts on AI generated podcasts?
This, what's the,
Notebook?
Is that the Google one that will basically take
a
book or a document and it'll turn it into 2 people discussing it, and some of it they make up and it's not real. I think the technology is fascinating. it's kind of on my list when I have time to play around to see how much of a like how good of a voice, AI voice of mine could I make um, by really going in and uploading 2 hours worth of stuff or whatever, so that if I was sick, could I write a podcast? That being said, I think that those of us that are staying human are going to be way more successful. If there's all this stuff about faceless YouTube channels, and sometimes people say, "How do I start a faceless YouTube channel?" And I'm like, "Not with me, because that's not what I'm going to teach you." There's people that are starting a faceless YouTube channel, right? And they just pick something random, like, 1800 warships, and sometimes the whole thing is video generated. Well, as soon as something like that gets popular, a bunch of other companies are going to go, "Oh, let's start one," right? Because there's nothing special about it, and then all of a sudden everybody's going to lose at that point, right? So that's why I always kind of keep coming back to the more you can put into it, the better. I will say two AI generated things that I think are really cool. One, if you wanted somebody else to like voice an intro for your podcast, like, welcome to the show, da 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 da, like you used to have to sometimes pay hundreds or thousands of dollars for somebody to do that well. Now the AI voices are so good for that. So I often encourage people to use them in that way, which I think is
Make it more exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then the other cool thing too is, you and I both talked about 11 Labs. With 11 Labs, you could actually go in and say it yourself, and it'll match your tone, and then but put it in the AI voice. And so I can be like a cool British guy with a deep, gravelly voice, or I can be an Australian woman, or whatever else, but still have that same tone and delivery. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see where that stuff goes, Doug. But I think that anything that is AI generated can be duplicated, and so it's not future proofed as well.
So we've definitely used 11 Labs and even the Underlord, the AI in Descript, where maybe a price has changed between when I've shot a video and when it's going out. And so we can just type that in and it'll actually take with context, it'll match my voice, the tonality and everything. And there's been so many little times where we've just been able to tweak something, but we're not generating content from that place yet. But I think AI as a sounding board to help you structure your podcast, come up with questions and things for your guests, that to me would be something I would be utilizing straight away. And also the AI tools in terms of cleaning up your audio. If your audio wasn't great, there's so many tools out there. Adobe Podcast, Descript's got a great one. A lot of video editing software now has audio cleanup functionality as well, removing background noise, making it sound like you've got a fancy microphone like Jerry, so it sounds really good. So yeah, the AI tools side of it, I'm all for. Generated podcasts.
Totally.
I'm with you.
Oh yeah. No, and if that was your question, Doug, then yes, use it for editing.
Oh no, I just segued. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, last one. This one snuck through, and it's got a few other people want to know this question as well. Can I just talk on my podcast, or does it need intro, outro, music, breaks, ads? What do you think?
Great question. So I think that YouTube has made me rethink this quite a bit. But I think there are two things that every podcast episode should have at the beginning. And in our module-based approach, these are the first two modules. The first one we call the confirmation module, and there's a whole framework on it. But it's essentially getting people into that episode. So we all have podcasts that we listen to while we are doing 8 other things. Maybe it's on a speaker and we walk in and out of the room, we don't really care. And then we have podcasts that like we're leaning in, right? We rewind, we skip back, we maybe even, occasionally take notes. And so we want to be that show as much as we can. And so the confirmation module is all about, and you can do this in anything, but it's all about getting them to not just want to listen or watch, but get them to really want to be into it. So that's for that episode. And then we follow that with the second module, which we call the vibe check module. And this is essentially what a podcast intro would be, which is, my wife Candy named it, but basically you're checking the vibe of the room. Like, am I going to like it here? Am I going to like this show? So the first key is to get them to listen to one episode, but then you also want them to hang around and listen to more episodes, right? And so we call it the vibe check module, and that's what that does. Now, when we were just doing audio, I would tell people 15 to 20 seconds max. I don't know if you've ever listened to one of these podcasts that has a 60-second intro every time. And like you're a loyal listener, and like by the 50th episode, you're like, oh my God, come on, skip, 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 right? That's rude to your loyal listeners. So we liked them nice and short. But my Done by Lunch Entrepreneurs one now, because it's on YouTube, is 9 seconds. They say that the average attention span is 8 seconds. And so I always kind of look at it on YouTube as if you take an 8-second tangent, you can get away with it without losing people completely. And so again, the shorter the better. But I do think it's important to kind of remind people what the overall the vibe is, essentially. So in that case, yes. As far as the other stuff, intro, outro music, if it makes it better and you have the time or the staff, I think that's fine. But if it just makes it more complex, then I don't think there's any reason to, no, you don't need that. You just on a related note, YouTube did this big study last year called Why We Watch 2.0. There was never a 1.0, so we don't know what happened there, but they connected brain sensors to people while they watched videos on YouTube. And they wanted to see where viewers were most satisfied. And of all the moments they were most satisfied, where they had the highest emotional connection, was when somebody on the screen did something very human, right? It wasn't because there was extra graphics and, jump cuts and B-roll and everything like that. And so what they found over and over again was that emotional connection was so much more important than technical quality. The only time technical quality mattered is if it improved the emotional connection. So when you bring up things like music, if you add music, and I have some, and I less so in some later episodes, but some of the early episodes of the show, I added more music to kind of match the tone. If the music enhances the emotional feel of it, then that's good. But if it doesn't, then it's just kind of there.
Yeah, I think the music piece is huge. Coming from documentary filmmaking, storytelling, the music, if it's done right, can be so powerful. But at the same time, it's much easier to do music wrong. So, and on YouTube, everyone's listening on different devices and things too. So
and
you
speeds.
might have it and speeds. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm a 2.8x person. That's my default. Then I go up or down from there, depending on who it is and how fast they're speaking. But it's you kind of got to play now for a much larger consumer base on different platforms, in that someone's headphones might make the music sound much louder than it is, and it could be annoying. Whereas someone watching on laptops or listening on laptop speakers, they might not even really hear it. So it's an interesting thing, but it's used to help the viewer. You tell the brain what the viewer should be feeling when they're consuming something. So it is really, really powerful if it's done right. We only play with music for our YouTube videos really at the start of the video. If you listen closely on some of the videos, there's music throughout the whole thing, but it's ramped back up at the end. So we want to start the vibe. The vibe check at the start is this is going to be upbeat, and then we kill it. We don't. We just tone it down because they're already in at that point. If they're still watching 15, 20 seconds in, they're there for the content. The music wasn't the hook there for them, but it's all about the vibe check.
Yeah. Yep.
Awesome. We will leave it there. Super. We've gone over time a lot, but thank you so much, Jerry. Guys, just put a Y in the chat if you found this beneficial. Jerry, thank you very much for coming on. And we'll bring up your slide again where people can find out more from you, go and follow you and connect with you. Here we go here. I'm hiding behind a comment. I got to work out the tech here. Here we go.
Like I said, I love talking about this stuff. So whether it's now or in 6 months, feel free to reach out to me on any of the social platforms. And if you want to learn the module thing, you can go to quitpodcasting.com. Now I'm laughing at that domain now that every time it comes up.
That's great. Awesome. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys, for interacting, playing full out. And we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.